we will get going here, and then hopefully some other people will jump on. But all right, let's get to it. My name is Tiffany Chag. I am the dietitian here at TB12 Sports. Today we are going to talk about how to stay healthy during a pandemic, which is definitely not a topic I ever thought I would have to present on, but here we are. So we're going to do the best we can and see if we can give you guys some tips and tricks to do the best you can. A few Zoom housekeeping. One, if you don't mind, just making sure in the bottom left-hand corner that your mute button is on. Just appreciate it for everyone else listening. The other thing is in the bottom middle part of your Zoom screen, there is a chat button. So I'm big on interaction when I talk and when I present. So we're going to use that feature. If you guys have questions as I'm going through the kind of information, please feel free to toss it into that chat section. I'll be kind of looking at it as I go through. Any questions I miss, we'll have plenty of time at the end, so I'll kind of comb back through and make sure we're getting to as many questions as possible. That being said, thanks for taking time out of your day to hang out and listen and learn, and hopefully, again, get you some good tips and tricks. So to get started, let's see if we can get this to work here. This is the first question I always ask people. It's kind of, what are you doing today to live your healthiest life? And I would say, you know, what are you doing maybe today that you weren't doing 6 or 8 weeks ago, like pre-quarantine, to live your healthiest life? So I'm gonna actually have you guys test out that chat section just to make sure we've all got it down. And this can be, you know, positive or negative. So maybe some of you are more active or less active, you're eating more or less, you're stressed out more or less. So go ahead and use the chat feature and just give me some ideas, like what is going on in your life right now that is different than what was happening in your life 6 to 8 weeks ago. Give you guys a couple seconds. There we go. All right, less movement, more coffee, fair enough. Cooking all meals at home, yep, probably not going out to restaurants since they're all closed. So just getting an idea of like what is going on. I think person that's cooking all the meals at home, we should have some good stuff for you as we go through this. But yeah, I think we see kind of these two worlds of increased movement and decreased movement. We'll talk about that a little bit as we go along. First thing is, you know, with COVID-19, there's limited shopping, right? Like we're going shopping less often, ideally once a week. My wife and I are trying to do it once every 2 weeks, which is a bit of a trick. Then once you get to the grocery store, there's not what maybe you had planned. So you can't even get what you want, or there's a cap on how many of the things that you wanted to get. So you can't get as many as you want. We're working from home, which means we're probably passing through the kitchen far more often, which probably means we're grazing a little bit more than we usually do. And then we have our kids at home. So now we're also a teacher, we're a coach, we're working from home. So we have this like increase in stress and decrease in outlets. We can't go out on a date night. We can't send the kids out for a play date. We can't go to a restaurant or the gym or whatever it is. So, you know, the routine is just kind of imploded. So ideally, we'll see if we can get you guys, you know, better way to kind of cope with this very uncertain time. That being said, we'll start with kind of our TB12 philosophy. And I've kind of just picked out some primary tenets here of what we believe and what we encourage our clients to do. So first is making sure you're adequately hydrated. That is paramount. We are mostly water, so making sure you have enough water in your day is hugely important to us. Number 2 is making it mostly plant-based. So we believe in 80-20, meaning 80% of what you eat is plant-based, 20% is animal. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we are vegan or vegetarian. If that is something that somebody chooses for ethical reasons, we 100% support it. But we are not saying you have to be vegetarian or vegan. We want you to have some portion of your diet, 20%, to be that lean, healthy animal protein. Number 3 is practice moderation. So I always talk about this in the world of like everyday and sometimes foods. So there are foods that are everyday that you want to eat every single day. And we can think of these as our fruits, our vegetables, our lean proteins, our whole grains. And then there are foods that I'd say are sometimes foods, which you want to eat some of the time. So these are our cookies, our cakes, our processed foods, you know, the foods that we consider the less healthful foods. So again, everything in moderation, all foods fit, just some more than others. Number 4 is to limit pro-inflammatory foods. And we think of pro-inflammatory foods, foods we know based on research that will cause inflammation are alcohol, our added sugars, our fried foods, processed meats, and refined carbohydrates. These 5 are 100% going to cause inflammation in the body. So we really want to try and minimize those in our diet. Number 5 is including essential fatty acids or essential fats. So we're thinking about our fatty fish, our avocados, our nuts and seeds, and making sure we're having a little bit of those every single day. And then the last part is just ensuring we have, enough of the first 5. If we are unable to meet those first 5, then we're looking at supplements to fill those gaps, right? I'll use the example of fatty fish because it's a pretty easy one. Ideally, we're eating, 2 servings of fatty fish a week. Right now, that's probably not happening. At least it's not happening very often with my clients. So this is a place where I think, adding an omega-3 or a fish oil to the diet, to your routine is really important. So again, I want to make sure you get the first 5, go to food first, but there will be gaps. And when those gaps present, and if there's nothing we can do about it, that's when we start to look at supplements. All right, let's see here. So we'll kind of delve into nutrition and immune health. And what we're really talking about is there are certain vitamins and minerals that we know that help support our immune system. That being said, we'll start with vitamin A. Vitamin A will help prevent infection, but it also helps in the production of antibodies, which neutralize pathogens. So pathogens are the bad guys that come in. Vitamin A helps in the production of antibodies, which kind of helps squash them. So vitamin A rich foods are typically foods that are bright orange in color. So we can think of our sweet potatoes, our carrots, and our egg yolks. So having 2 eggs for breakfast, snacking on carrots, adding some roasted sweet potatoes for dinner, really, really easy way to get vitamin A. Next is our B vitamin foods, and we're really thinking about vitamins B6, B9, and B12. These guys help in the production of T cells. So again, these are very specific immune cells. T cells attack pathogens and cause them to implode. We call this apoptosis, but it causes like cell death, which is a really good thing if it's a dangerous cell. And it also sends out an alarm. So it sees this dangerous cell and says, hey, immune cells, I need some help. And it kind of recruits other cells to come and fight the virus or infection or whatever may be going on. B-rich foods or vitamin B-rich foods are dark leafy greens, so spinach, kale, collard greens, that you can cook right into the eggs. And then snacking on like almonds and nuts and seeds. So again, these are foods that you probably have most of the time. And just some things that I would say, maybe eat them a little bit more often. If you normally have scrambled eggs or fried eggs, I might say this is a really great time to start putting in like spinach and kale, fresh or frozen, into those eggs as best you can or as often as you can. Next is vitamin C. So vitamin C is a hugely powerful antioxidant. We know this because we know when we get sick, it's typically, we have to have some vitamin C. I will say when quarantine first hit and everyone kind of started to go into lockdown, we went grocery shopping and the entire section of Whole Foods, the vitamin C section, was gone. There was literally like one little jar left. And I was like, wow. So people are aware to have vitamin C, but it's actually not that hard to get it from food. So instead of in the morning having a banana or an apple, have 2 kiwis and or 2 oranges. Sip on lemon water throughout the day or add berries to your smoothie. Really easy to meet your vitamin C requirements throughout the day through food. It's not to say that you couldn't use more, but again, food will be an easy source to meet that need. Really basic here. Again, like whatever you're doing, I might say remove the non-citrus and add citrus to your day. Vitamin D. So the best source of vitamin D is obviously the sun. Now, we are in New England and the sun is just starting to say hello. So get out in the sun as best you can, 15 to 20 minutes daily without sunscreen. That will at least give you a little boost in D. Eggs, fatty fish, all great sources of D. But this is an area that I think, we start to consider supplementation. For my clients, I won't put them, I'll moderate the dose based on their biomarker. So I want to have labs done to see where they land. And then I can say like what the appropriate amount of vitamin D is. Now, let me back up a little bit. Vitamin D helps fight pathogens and it helps fight pathogens specifically that cause infection. There's some really interesting research coming out with regard to vitamin D status and the effect you see of people who get COVID. So those with a lower vitamin D status tend to have a worse experience if they contract the virus. Now, it's not to say that that's necessarily the case. They're seeing some correlation, but as we know, correlation does not mean causation. So I think just be aware next time you go to the doctor, which there's no rush right now, but I would certainly see like, where is your vitamin D biomarker? What is your blood vitamin D? And then we can start seeing what actually has to happen. What do we have to dose to make sure you're getting enough? In the meantime, just get out in the sun, eat eggs, fatty fish when you can, and then consider a supplement. Iron-rich foods. So there's two types of iron. There's heme iron, which is found in animal, and then there's non-heme iron, which is found in plant. Both are great sources. Animal is ideal. You won't have to eat as much to get the same amount. So ideally meat, chicken, fish, eggs. Again, you're seeing a recurring theme here. But plant sources are also a great source. You just have to eat a little bit more of them, right? So either one is great. If you're doing plant-based, then you'll just have to eat a little bit more to get the same amount of iron. Iron helps destroy pathogens as well, and it helps regulate enzymes that help create immune cells. So again, really important for immune health and our immune system. And then the last one on this list is just making sure you have zinc-rich foods in your diet. So if you are typically snacking on, almonds and pumpkin seeds, this would be a good time to choose cashews instead that have a higher amount of zinc in them. Including legumes, again, a great source of zinc in them. And I would say if you can add legumes being like black beans, chickpeas, lentils to your day once a day is a great start. Other sources of zinc, seafood, oysters, which may be a little bit more challenging to get. So again, this is kind of that area of like, do the best you can. If you look at your multivitamin, there's probably some zinc in there. Zinc, just to back up, is a powerful antioxidant. It also helps with immune cell growth and proliferation. So this, for zinc, what I always picture is, if you guys have seen the episode of I Love Lucy, where Lucy and Ethel are wrapping up the little chocolates as they're coming out. And at first it's a nice slow process, and we got it under control. And then all of a sudden the machine cranks up and all of a sudden those chocolates start coming out faster. That's essentially what zinc is doing when we talk about cell proliferation. It is creating more immune cells, or it's helping produce more immune cells. So really, really important, and relatively easy to get, especially if you've got a multivitamin in your day, then you're probably definitely getting zinc. So there's a lot of kind of specificities here, but I think one, if you eat the rainbow, right? So if your dish looks like the dish on this screen right now, you're getting a wide variety of vitamins and minerals. You're going to get your vitamin A, you're going to get your B vitamins. You're going to cover a lot of bases by just eating a variety of foods and making it colorful. Two, I would incorporate eggs. Eggs are in 5 of the 6 vitamins and minerals I just talked about. So having eggs daily is definitely something I would highly encourage you all to do. And then eat an orange a day. So we're all eating fruit daily, likely. So just choose a citrus fruit as opposed to the banana, apple, pear, or other piece of fruit. Or however you want to include it, whether you add it to the day or substitute it out, either way works. So before I continue on here, are there any questions with regard to what I just kind of sped through? Good. All right, don't be shy, guys. If you've got questions, I'm happy to kind of go through. I think the most interesting one to me is the vitamin D, just because of the research that's coming out. I think we still have a long ways to go, but it is kind of interesting to look at specifically with COVID-19, the relationship that may exist there. But anyways, okay, so moving right along. Kind of now we understand like what vitamins and minerals, what foods we want to incorporate into the day. So we're going to make a plan, right? I call this my family sanity plan. So if you are in a family and you have kids, this is going to help you maintain some semblance of sanity. So, getting the kids involved in the meal planning will make mealtime much, much easier down the road. So if they know Tuesdays and Thursdays are taco nights and they got to pick that, they're gonna be far more excited for that night. And they also kind of had a say in what goes on. So my wife and I did this, and we do this over like a 2-week span, which gets a little bit crazy, but you can do it. And the nice thing about this is that it becomes your shopping list, right? So if I know I'm doing breakfast and I'm having eggs most of the time, maybe Greek yogurt 2 other days or whatever it is, that really easily becomes my grocery list. So I don't have to do that much work once I have the plan in place. Now, just because I have the plan in place doesn't mean I necessarily stick to it, but at least I've taken kind of that stressor off my plate. Like I already have the plan in place. If all goes out the window, I know I've got my meal plan set. That said, despite having my grocery list, there are certain foods that I would say stock up on, have in your house, in your pantry, in your fridge, in your freezer at all times. And this is that list. So canned tomatoes, you can literally make 100 dishes if you have canned tomatoes, and some beans, legumes. You know, again, like we're shopping once every 2 weeks. So our fresh produce doesn't last that long, or most of it doesn't last that long. The potatoes usually do. So we're just leaning on more of the frozen fruits and vegetables right now, which again, I'm going to pick and choose my battles. I think that's absolutely fine. They're picked at the peak of their freshness, and that's when they're frozen. So they still are very nutrient dense. So do the best you can, but don't shy away from the frozen products right now. So just from this list, you can actually now make all of these recipes. So all of these recipes are made from that previous list, and we can send this whole thing out to you guys so you have it. But everything on this list, enchiladas, the chili, the stir fry, the lentil soup, all come from the ingredients found on the previous slide. So big thing when you're making all of these is just to think, I want to pick a protein, right? I'm going to have my protein, and then I'm going to pick a starch, and then I'm going to have my non-starch veggies. So my starch is like the typical carbohydrates, the rice, the pasta, the whole grains. And then my non-starch vegetables are all my traditional vegetables, everything but potatoes, peas, and corn. So just think of that. Like I want to have those three components, my protein, my starch, and my non-starch on my plate, or in my meal plan or my recipe. So now you've kind of got that in place. Now we want to think about kind of how you would build your plate. So like I was asking earlier, is kind of, has activity increased or decreased? And I think, you know, again, like I'm seeing two paths. People who are now not commuting, so they have this like 2 hours of newfound time, who maybe live a little further away. I'm in Boston, so there's a lot of people, so less likely to go outside for a run, because that just seems moderately irresponsible. But for if you live in the burbs, right, like you can go out for a run and not be near people, and you have this newfound time, so activity is increasing. And for other people, like myself, who live in a city, who are around people, activity decreases, right? That's absolutely fine. We're going to do the best we can. But what I will say is, depending on what your activity does, your plate should shift, right? So if you look at these plates, you'll see that one thing does not change, and that's my protein content. So protein across the board here, no matter how active I am, very little on the far left to very, very highly active on the far right, my protein quantity does not change. It will always be about 1/4 to 1/3 of my plate. What will change are my starch and non-starch. So remember from previous slide, my starches are kind of my whole grain, my more typical carbohydrates. And then my non-starch vegetables are everything but potatoes, peas, and corn. So that will change based on activity level. Now, just to be abundantly clear here, the plate on the far right, that highly active plate, that is really a plate for like my collegiate athletes, my pro athletes who are doing doubles or just have highly, highly intense training sessions. So most of us probably don't fall into that category unless maybe we're marathon training and it's that long run day. For the rest of us, we're going to fall into the moderate. So if we're doing about 60 minutes of activity a day and you know, moderate to high intensity, we're going to live in that middle plate. And then if we're, you know, if we go out for half-hour walks or we do 20-30 minute training sessions a couple days a week, we're going to live on that far left. So again, just being mindful of how active I am, I'll adjust my starch on my plate. Another way to think about this is the amount of the protein. So I said 1/4 to 1/3 of the plate. We can always measure food, and I will always do this with clients, is kind of the palm, fist, or thumb. So the protein on my plate should be a palm, 1 to 2 palms or fists of protein per plate. That's going to equal about 1/4 to 1/3 of my plate. And that's for a meal. For a snack, I'm going to do about 1/2 a palm or 1/2 a fist per snack, right? So making sure I have that protein portion of my plate. Then I go to kind of my protein sources. So that the palm, and this is one of the questions that came up earlier, but a palm of protein is equal to about 20 grams, which is equal to about 3 to 4 ounces. So depending on how you shop and how you prepare your meals, if you're buying, you know, a top sirloin, 8 ounces would essentially be 2 servings of protein or 40 grams, right? So, but again, easy way is just a palm of chicken, a palm of steak, a can of tuna, a cup of lentils, which would be about a fist, 2 to 3 eggs. These are all about 15 to 20 grams of protein. And then, a scoop of protein powder is 20, 22 grams of protein. So depending on the brand, but ours are anywhere from they're about 20 grams. Then we go to those other 2 portions again, just to make sure I'm hitting this home. Your starches, again, ideally go to the vegetables first. So the potatoes, peas, corn, butternut squash is also another one. And then you have your rice, your quinoa, your oatmeal. So that portion of the plate's a little bit smaller and will get a little bit bigger if you're very active. But then you have the majority of your plate, comfortably a half, is going to be your non-starch vegetables. So your dark leafy greens, your carrots, your onions, and then always lean on anything frozen right now. Again, if you're only shopping once a week, by week's end, the fresh, you may be running out of kind of the kale and lettuce stuff. So having bags frozen right now is a great option. Depending on if it's available, I will say we have gone shopping a few times and now have about 2 or 3 bags of okra frozen in our freezer. So we've put it into some bean dishes. It's not that bad. It's certainly not my first choice, but if it's the only choice I have, I'll take it and I'll make it work. So again, just going back to do the best you can. All right, so you kind of have the dish made, you have an idea of how to match it to activity. Just some quick tips on snacks and meals here, just that I'm seeing this kind of recurring theme. 1, don't eat out of the box or bag. Take a moment and serve it into a dish. So because we're passing the kitchen more often, we tend to kind of just grab a snack, and by the end of the day, we have no idea how much we've had. So take a moment, serve. If you're going to have a handful of almonds, just put the handful into a dish and see what you're having. Because if you have 4 or 5 of those over the course of the day, that tiny dish becomes a huge bowl, right? So take a moment and put it into a dish. Number 2, don't eat on the go. Sit and eat. Take a moment to relax and enjoy your meal and kind of practice some kind of what we call mindful eating or intuitive eating, where you really experience like the taste and the texture and the smell and the sound of eating your food. You'll be able to sense your satiation. So when you're full, better. But you also enjoy the meal more and be aware of what you've just eaten. And the last one is don't boredom eat. So I think potentially a lot of us are doing that right now. 1, try and drink water. If you think you're eating because you're bored, drink a glass of water first. If you are still hungry 10, 15 minutes later, then you're hungry and certainly eat something. But if you're not, you're probably just boredom eating, so have a sip of water. The other thing, and I use this often with kids, is you can do a fruit or veggie test. So this is if I'm walking by the kitchen and I think I'm hungry, I can have carrots, I can have a sliced apple with cinnamon, I can have any fruit or vegetable I want. If I'm hungry, I'll take that. But if I'm not, I may want my chips or whatever it is. And so then it's actually not necessarily hunger. It's probably just boredom. So skip it and try and come back later. So takeaways from the meal planning section. 1, use the family sanity slide to make a plan. Have 1 to 2 palms of protein per meal, and then make half your plate non-starch vegetables. I don't care if it's fresh or frozen right now. Any questions on that stuff, guys? Good, pretty straightforward. All right, so we're gonna go right along. So now you kind of, again, we have an idea of what we're looking for with regard to nutrients. We have kind of a plan in place. I think one of the things that we have to address is kind of this idea of routine. So hopefully at this point, since we're a few weeks into quarantine, you guys all have kind of figured out your routine over the course of the day. I'll say for myself, in the first week of quarantine, I realized it was going to be a disaster because there was no routine. I didn't have like my wake up, shower, get to work by a certain time. It was kind of just like, well, do some work. Okay, oh, you have to eat breakfast. You forgot to eat breakfast. Oh, maybe you should, read the newspaper. Oh, you have to go work out. And so the schedule was a mess. So I learned really quickly and early on that I need to create some sort of schedule for myself. So that's exactly what you're looking at is my morning schedule. Wake up at 5:30, go to the bathroom, then I have my coffee and my newspaper, but it gives me some sort of structure to my day so that I know every single day, this is how I'm going to start. And so it lays a foundation for the rest of my day, because I find if I don't do that, it's a domino effect. I hit that domino and then the rest of the day just kind of devolves. So, again, try to create some sort of morning schedule for you that works for you, that you can do over and over again as best you can. Part of that is, if I know for me, I'm going to have to wake up at 5:30 in the morning, you better believe that I'm going to bed. I'll say 9 because it's embarrassing. But I'm getting to bed early enough to make sure I can wake up at 5:30, right? So part of it is also managing my bedtime to make sure I'm ready for the next day. This is just a sample meal plan, right? So again, I have my weekly or bi-monthly plan, but I also want to have a plan in place for the day. What does my day look like? I just had a conversation with a client about snacking that she's doing kind of the grazing through the kitchen and not doing the dishes. So what we did was we just said, all right, you're going to put out 4 bowls. You'll pick your snacks out in the morning, and that's what you're going to have over the course of the day. So it's kind of just giving her some semblance of structure. I think same thing goes here, is that if I know I'm having breakfast and this is what it is, and I know what my snacks are, I kind of will stay within the routine that I've created. And then just taking a look at, again, the supplement component, filling the gaps where that's necessary. Let's touch upon hydration because it is hugely important. As you guys probably know, we're drinking half our body weight in ounces of water daily. I'm a big advocate for people who are struggling with getting to that number to habit stack. And this is a term that was made popular by James Clear in his book, Atomic Habits. It's the idea of taking a habit that already occurs, something that you do subconsciously. So I get up, I go to the bathroom, I make my cup of coffee. The second I make my cup of coffee, I turn around and grab my cup of water, which is a new habit I'm trying to form, right? So again, it can be whatever your routine is, but whatever habit you do every single morning. I walk my dog every single morning. Before I walk my dog, I'm going to stack this new habit, like drinking water, onto the old, right? So that's just what I'm trying to do. I want to take an old habit and stack my new one with that. And then of course, the easy second bullet here is just make sure you've got a reusable container and or glass of water wherever you're working at all times, just to kind of lower that barrier. We will touch upon alcohol because I think, there may be a minor, tiny little uptick right now in our consumption. It is pro-inflammatory, 100%, we know that. It is also an unusual time, so don't beat yourself up. Set a goal for the week and try to stick with that. Whatever that number is, you decide, but try to stick with that. For every glass of alcohol you do have, I would encourage you to have a glass of water just to make sure that you're not thirsty, especially that first glass. I would have a cup of water before you drink that first beverage, just so that you don't drink that first beverage in half the time you normally would because you're actually thirsty and not necessarily wanting to enjoy the beverage. So do the best you can here. Last part here is just to touch upon supplements. I think, as I said earlier, the vitamin C, a lot of people are kind of taking a ton of that right now. You can have too much of a supplement, right? Because it's just the single form. There's nothing to slow it down. There's nothing to allow you to not be absorbed. So one, check your multivitamin. Oftentimes your multivitamin will have some of these individual nutrients. So vitamin C would probably be in your multivitamin. Number 2 is just remember food first. Food works in it works a better combination than the single supplement. So I'll use the example of vitamin D, which we mentioned early on, is found in fatty fish. Vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin, meaning you need fat to absorb it. So vitamin D found in fatty fish, it's a perfect combination because the fat in the fish allows for the vitamin D to be absorbed. So the food will always work better and be more effective than the individualized supplement. There are certainly situations where the supplement is necessary, but go food first, then supplement. That's exactly what it is. It's a supplement to the diet. And the last part here is just more is not necessarily better. Keep that in mind. I think sometimes we get carried away by saying, oh, I need to take this, I need to take this. And all of a sudden I'll see with clients that they're taking, high doses of magnesium, which become problematic and a diuretic, and they can't understand why they have diarrhea. It's because they've got magnesium in their multivitamin, they've got it in their this, that, and the other, and all of a sudden they're having way too much. So just be mindful of how much you're having, and more is not necessarily better. We'll finish on this slide. Just a challenge to you guys. 1, try to drink half your body weight in ounces of water every single day. Replace the banana and or apple with an orange. So you're eating an orange every single day. Make half your plate, every single plate night, at least lunch and dinner, colorful vegetables in a variety of different colors. Include 1 to 2 palms of protein at every single meal and snack. Make a plan. Have a plan in place. Make your life easier, even though it'll be tough to make in that moment, but once you have it, you're set. And then go to bed and wake up at the same time every single day, just to give you some semblance of routine during a very non-routine time. So I'll end on that. You guys, if you have any questions, feel free to send them over using the chat. Happy to answer anything and everything you've got. Thanks for taking time to listen. Question about, can you eat bread? Yes, you can eat bread. This was a question that came in at on one of the first talks. Yes, I think the problem with bread is that we probably eat a little bit too much of it. So we have a bagel for breakfast or an English muffin for breakfast. We have a sandwich for lunch, and then we're having, pasta for dinner. So we're having a lot of gluten in particular. So just be mindful of how much bread or gluten you're having. It's not a problem. It's only a problem if you have a ton of it. So again, think of that plate. That starch is a very small section of your plate. If you're having a bagel, that bagel is taking up a whole lot of the section of your plate. So bread's not inherently bad. Enjoy it, but enjoy it in moderation. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you taking time to listen. I'll see you all soon. Question on fasting. No, Eric, this is a great question. I actually had this one come up as well in the earlier talk. Listen, intermittent fasting is, there's great research out there with regard to weight loss. And I think there's two things that we can look at. Either intermittent fasting, IF, with regard to weight management, weight loss, or intermittent fasting, and we call it time-restricted eating, which is essentially the same thing with regard to aging and longevity. I'll speak to the intermittent fasting with regard to weight management. What happens is when you do that, you decrease your caloric intake. So just like any diet, whether it's keto, paleo, Whole30, whatever it is, you never really decrease the amount you're eating and decrease calories so you lose weight. So that's where intermittent fasting is effective. Now, the problem there is that, and what I always ask is, is this something you plan on doing for the rest of your life? If the answer is yes, if you're somebody who normally doesn't eat breakfast, it's not a big deal, you don't miss it, you don't want it, then this is certainly a conversation to have. If this is not, if you are a breakfast person or you like to go out to dinner with friends or whatever it is, then intermittent fasting is probably not for you. Now, to switch gears, there's the time-restricted eating, which is essentially the same thing. There is some really interesting research coming out there. Again, the question is this something you plan on doing for the rest of your life, right? So if you plan on eating in a 10 or 8 hour window and you're good with that, then certainly let's figure that out. The trouble is I find it can be very, very restrictive and people have a hard time adhering to it. So, again, it really is person dependent. If that's something that kind of already naturally fits your schedule, fantastic. If it's not, there are a lot of other things you can do, like exercise and eat a well-balanced meal and manage your stress to improve, longevity. So kind of two schools of thought there on intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating, whatever we want to talk about. But I think it may have its benefits, but it has to fit your lifestyle and your schedule over the long term. Awesome. All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. And I'll see you all soon.